So this is our Getting to Know You Agencies and Foster Carers live stream. We're thrilled to have you joining us for this event today. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we're all meeting from. We are meeting from different areas today, but I am meeting on Wurundjeri country. So I pay my respects to elders past and present and any First Nations people joining us on the live stream today. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name's Jasmine. I am the Foster Carer Connection Specialist at Fostering Connections, Victoria's statewide recruitment service for foster carers. So when you inquire with us or give us a call, I'm the person on the other end of that phone line, there to answer any questions that you have and help you make a choice about whether you'd like to become a foster carer. It's almost the end of the year, so it is a wonderful time for us to be celebrating the hard work of our foster carers. And also for people to learn how to become foster carers in 2021, if that is something that you are interested in doing. So today we have an opportunity to speak to one of our wonderful foster carers from Victoria, and also some workers from the different Victorian foster care agencies that you might work with if you do become a foster carer. So these agencies are there to support you as a foster family and to help you with that journey. And they will also be responsible for your accreditation process as well. So this will be a panel discussion where each of our panelists will provide insights into what it's like working with them or what it's like to be a foster carer in Dale's case. And if you are joining us today while this is running live, feel free to pop questions in the chat and we will be able to respond to those at the end of the discussion. So I'm joined today by Dale, who is our wonderful foster carer, Tracy, Michaela and Chrysanne, who are all workers from our Victorian foster care agencies. I will get them all to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Dale, our wonderful foster carer. Dale, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine. So my name's Dale. I've been a foster carer with Key Assets for almost 7 years now. So I've had a few different kids over the years. I've had everything from I've got 2 siblings in a long-term care order at the moment, but I've also had a number of respite cares, and I've had different ones on short-term cares, some for a month, some for 6 months. I've had one for 2 years as well. So I've sort of had quite a variety over the last 6 to 7 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Dale. We've got Michaela joining us from Wathaurong.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm from Wathaurong and I joined the foster care team this year. Thank you.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Wathaurong different?
Wathaurong's all about making connections with community. So when we speak to people who come through, we like to get to know the people and their families. So over time, the process isn't just about collecting information, it's about building a relationship with our foster carers.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michaela. We've got Tracy joining us from Mallee Family Care.
Hi everyone, I'm Tracy and I work for Mallee Family Care in the Northern Mallee-Mildura area. We have over 60 programs running throughout the...
I think we've lost Tracy. I think we've lost the audio there, but we'll move on to Chrysanne from Anglicare.
Hi everyone, my name is Chrysanne. I've been with Anglicare for the last 5 years now, working the foster care program. Anglicare, as some of you might have heard, has been around for a number of years now, over 20 years, providing services for vulnerable children and families and out-of-home care and lots of other different programs as well. So lovely to be here to have a chat.
Fantastic. So the steps to becoming a foster carer in Victoria will be largely the same no matter which agency you choose. This includes attending an information session, running through some background checks like police checks and working with children checks, completing training, which usually takes about 16 hours, just depending on the format that your agency chooses to deliver that with, and undertaking some assessment interviews. So every agency will make this experience unique. And for our foster carers coming through this process, you will find that it is a really in-depth process. And as Michaela mentioned, it is a really important way to build that relationship with the agency that you go with. So for each agency, can you tell us a little bit about what makes it special going through that assessment process at your agency, what sets you apart from the others, how you do things differently maybe? And we'll start with you, Chrysanne. Tell us about your recruitment process.
Sure. Yes, so like Jasmine and Michaela have said, it's all about building relationships. Given that we work in the sector with families, young people, we do want to focus on building relationships. So that's where we start. We would, going through the recruitment process is a bit of meeting and greeting. So we do lots of information sessions where we first meet you, and then we do trainings, and then we do the assessments, learning a bit about you as a family and what you're going to bring to us and what we can bring to you guys. So with Anglicare, we try to ensure that we have the same worker from start to finish. So you have the same. If it's me, you'll have me doing your info sessions, you'll have me doing your training. I'd love to come out, meet you, do the assessment. So that's something that we do try to do. In Anglicare in the South where I work, we're a smaller team. So we do have the ability to focus a bit more personally on you. So I suppose that's something special that we try to do for our carers through the recruitment process.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chrysanne. It is great to be able to build that relationship from that first phone call right through to the final panel. Michaela, tell me about the recruitment process at Wathaurong. What sets you apart?
Initially, we start with an information session, which would be via a phone call. And then we like to come out and meet you, maybe for a cup of coffee or something like that. It really is about building that relationship. So after we send the email with the required documents that we need, we're going to check in with you, give a couple of phone calls. How are you going with it? Is it too much? Do you need a bit more time? There's no rush on it. And then after that, we're part of a very small team. So there's 4 people in our foster care team, and each of us will meet you so that you will know everyone in the foster care team. So if one of us isn't there at that time of, if you have a child in placement, you know all of us and we have that relationship with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michaela. So a little bit of a different approach at each of your agencies, but really all about that relationship building. Dale, you've been through the assessment process and I've worked with you previously, so I know you've done it more than once. Can you tell us a little bit about what that process was like when you first were accredited, and also going through that assessment process again when you met your lovely wife?
Yeah, it was extremely overwhelming when you're first trying to get your head around it. I never forget sitting at the kitchen table with my late wife at the time. We were looking, Andrea was actually telling us the entire process that you need to go through to get accredited. And it was extremely overwhelming. But when you actually get your head around it, they actually walk you through it step by step. And that was the biggest support that we needed at that particular time in order to do that. So it never stopped us. We were very determined to do it. And I think that was one of the keys for us anyway, is that once you get that head around it and you understand the process a little bit more, you've basically been step by step through that. So it was a great process and a great outcome in the end.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dale. You mentioned there that the process does go step by step, which is actually the name of the assessment process. So your workers like Michaela or Chrysanne, depending on which agency you do decide to go with, they will help you each step along the way to make sure that you know what's coming next, make sure that you're comfortable with moving forward, and helping you decide how long that process might take for your family, given your specific set of circumstances. Every new foster carer will have to go through that process. So as I mentioned, if you do repartner or if your family circumstances change, any new adults going through that process will have to start that process again, but your workers will be there to help you understand what those requirements are for your individual circumstances, and there to support you every step of the way to make sure you hopefully don't get too overwhelmed. Dale, could you tell me, is there any advice you would give somebody who is about to go through that recruitment process?
Yeah, I mean, my greatest advice is really just be determined and don't think that it's too much, because you don't need to be a very academic person. You don't have to be a straight A student. Everyone and anyone can do it. And a lot of times we may feel that we may not be qualified to do this, but generally you do have the tools, and it's that process that helps you to use those tools or to understand what you're capable of, and it really does. And then that's where the journey starts. And then from that point on, the support you get helps you along that way too. So just be determined and focus on the main goal and the main reason why you started or wanting to foster care in the first place.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dale. And that's a really good point, to stick at it through each step, and to be really open and communicative with the agency that you're working with. If you do need a break through that assessment process, if your circumstances change, you absolutely can do that. And it's all about just making it work for your family as well, making sure it's not too much for what your family is going through. Michaela, could you tell me about what the most rewarding part of working with foster carers has been for you?
Definitely the most rewarding part has been able to get to know so many wonderful people that are willing to open up their home to children in need of a placement.
Fantastic. And Chrysanne, what about you? What's the most rewarding part of working with foster carers?
I think over the last 5 years, you see so many wonderful things with carers. It's hard to pick one, if I'm honest. But I think watching our foster carers go through this transformation process where they start off being really nervous and really unsure of whether this is something they can do. And then, you know, when they cross their first challenge and come to the other side of it, to be able to reflect on things and help them process, wow, look what you've done. I mean, look how far you've come and look how you've overcome this challenge. And look what's happened to this child. You know, this child has really blossomed. This child has settled so well in your placement. And this child has achieved something that, you know, 6 months ago or a year ago, we would never have thought possible. So I suppose that's probably the biggest and most rewarding thing. And sometimes it comes as a big surprise to our foster carers as well, because, you know, when they start off, they start to doubt themselves and wonder, can I do this? Am I the right person for this job? But I can assure you that you do have the skills, and, you know, if you really open up your heart and open up your mind to learning some new things, that there is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can do so much more than you ever thought possible.
Absolutely, Chrysanne. I couldn't agree more. And I think what you mentioned there about having the skills or not being sure if you have those skills, that is what the agency is there for, to support you. So again, whichever agency you choose, they will help you to understand what your existing skill set is and how that will apply to fostering, and also provide training and opportunities to learn and grow if there are areas that you do feel you need to build some competence or confidence in, to make sure that you can do what is in the best interest of the children in your care. Dale, can you tell me about what the most rewarding experience you've had as a foster carer has been?
Yeah, personally, I think the memories that I've been able to create with the young kids, it's something that money can never buy, is that kind of thing. Because you know, when you see a child come into your care and look, you've got to understand where they come from too. A lot of kids have been in care their whole life, so you're just another adult to them. But when you actually see them, when you actually support them, and when you see that change in them, when they start relying on you and leaning on you, it's a completely different experience that you can't sort of explain in words as to what you feel for that, because they're the memories that you start to create. We've been able to take some on holidays as well up to Queensland. It's been great. We've been supported by the agencies as well with that, and you know, we've got photos and memories that money can never replace.
Yep, amazing. Can you think of a specific example of a time where you really felt you made an impact as a foster carer?
Yeah, I think you know, we had a girl for about 6 months who was changing schools, and when she first came into our care, she was only about 7 or 8 years old, and they're very resilient, so nothing scared her. You'd go to the shopping centre, you'd be hard to keep her by your side. You'd sit there, have a coffee, and she'd go sit on the counter and watch the barista just make coffee. So they're very resilient, and they nothing really fazed them. But I just remember when, after about 6 months, she was changing schools, and when we went to the school in orientation, I was with her, and I went to take her into the classroom to introduce her school, and she ducked behind me and grabbed me on the leg, and she was hiding behind me and pushing me forward. And it was the first point that I actually realized that she was leaning on me to support her. It was a huge sort of impact for me, that I thought, and since then she's still with me in a long-term care order. So to watch her actually grow like that made a massive impact on her, but what it does for me too is a massive impact as well, and it's such a great thing to see.
Thank you for sharing that story, Dale. And you're spot on. It is amazing to see some of the resilience of the children that do come into care. But I think one of the greatest impacts we have is letting kids let go of that armour and not need to be so resilient and just be kids and rely on adults in their lives. So it's fantastic that you're able to be one of those safe and trusted adults for some of our young people. Many of our children in care will come from diverse backgrounds, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. Caring for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children is a privilege, and wherever possible, we do aim to have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children placed in the care of their extended family or members of their community. But when it's not possible to do that, carers from all walks of life will step in to care and provide a culturally safe home for those children and young people. To make sure that they can have positive life experiences that are still culturally, socially and emotionally safe for those children and young people. Michaela, Wathaurong is a Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander specific agency. Could you tell me about what that means and what's unique about fostering with an ACCO? You're muted.
Sorry. We know Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people are overrepresented in the out-of-home care system, the health sector and family violence. Providing care for Aboriginal children not only helps children, but their families and community. Caring for Aboriginal children actually plays a big part in closing the gap. And at Wathaurong, you are trained specifically for caring for an Aboriginal child so that it is culturally safe. And you're also getting a chance to be alongside this young person, connecting with community.
Fantastic. Do you have to be an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person yourself to apply at an ACCO like Wathaurong?
No, you don't.
Thank you. And what support or training do foster carers of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children receive that might be different to carers of non-Indigenous children?
So our training is tailored to provide care for Aboriginal children and young people. We go over a history of Aboriginal people. We go over culture, being culturally safe in the placement and what that means to Aboriginal people and community, how important that is. We provide ongoing supervision to foster carers, and we also have a foster carer support group.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you.
Chrysanne, could you tell me about what support foster carers receive during the assessment process and also during placement when that first connection to a child has been made?
Yeah. So support for our foster carers can be really tailored to what you as a foster caring family particularly need. So, and we would have worked that out through conversations across the whole process. And for some, that might look like, touching base on a weekly, at least in the initial stages of your placement. It might be us touching base with you every week to have a chat to see how things are going, to troubleshoot any problems, or it might be once every fortnight. It kind of just depends on what you would like to happen. So through the accreditation process, you'll have one worker or two workers talking you through the assessment, and we'll go with that at your pace, however fast or however slow you want that to go. We will do that within the resources that we have. And, we'll take you to panel, we'll talk you through the whole process. You're never alone. I suppose that's the one thing I really want to stress, that you're never alone. You always have someone around. And through this process, we like to come out to your house. We'd like to invite you to come to the office so you get to meet and greet the rest of the team. We're not a very big team either. So it's more like, so you become familiar with us, you see the faces, you know who you're meeting, and you know the team. And when you make your first placement, it's probably the most exciting time for anybody, including us. We're all nervous, we're excited, we're anxious, a lot of different emotions. So again, we'll work with you, whatever you need. Communicate with us, open line of communication. It's the best way to go. You'll have a case manager and you have a carer support worker. So one of us who are doing your assessment and your training will be your carer support. So that's support dedicated primarily to you. You can touch base with us however often you want. It's usually once a month. but that could obviously go for once a fortnight or once a week. And then you also have a client. So the child in your care, that child also has a dedicated case manager. And we also offer 24/7 support through the phone, after our services, on the weekend as well. So you'll always have somebody to chat to.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chrysanne. Dale, could you tell me about some of the supports you've received from your agency and how they've helped you over your carer journey?
Yeah, Key Assets has been a major part of the support for me. I have actually lived through some of my darkest days after a couple of years. Unfortunately, my wife died very suddenly, so I did need a lot of support at the time. So Key Assets had actually supplied therapeutic specialists in order to come in and help with the kids. They helped with myself as well as between the case manager. They had actually brought in a lot of respite care as well. Whatever I needed, the support was there. So it was overwhelming support. It was certainly some of my darkest days, but I don't think I could have been able to get through without it. But it did really help me to focus on things, and you could see that the support they had given, especially with the therapeutic support and the actual case managers themselves, walked me through it. And even though we suffered with the grief, we managed to get through and continue caring up till today. So that's been a massive support.
Thank you for sharing that, Dale. And in terms of where you're at now, when your placements are quite stable and things are going well, how often are you in touch with your case manager and the agency, and what sorts of things do they do to support you now?
We get regular support from the case managers. We get a call every month. We have a care team meeting with the schools and with the actual case manager themselves. Every fortnight they do come out. They do support one to support the kids, and then the next fortnight they do come out. I've actually remarried, so they support my wife and myself as well. So they're very in frequent contact with us. Anything we do need, they're just a phone call away. Sometimes we do understand they're busy, but by that afternoon, generally we get a phone call back or whatever it is. So we do receive that support. And I know at Key Assets as well, we also have they also have an after hours line too. So if it's over the weekend, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, nothing's out of reach. So that's the sort of support that I've received, and it really has helped a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dale. At any agency you choose to foster through as well, there are always ongoing training opportunities. There are support groups that you can access, and you do also have support from the Foster Care Association of Victoria as well, if you ever need a bit more advice or advocacy on for yourself as a carer outside of the scope of your case manager as well. Chrysanne, could you tell me a little bit about how things have changed in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic? How has your accreditation process changed over the last year or so? 2 years now.
So the actual process has remained the same. We've just gone remotely. So we tend to do everything, via Zoom or rather than meeting in person, which is something I really miss, because building connection with carers is so important, and we do like to do that in person. So mostly things have gone online. So we do lots of information sessions online. All our training and stuff is online. However, we are moving back now to face-to-face events. So it's lovely to come back to see all of our lovely carers.
Fantastic.
But other than that, not much has changed. Yeah.
Could you tell me about some of the benefits of moving to a remote accreditation process? Have you seen any benefits?
Yeah, definitely. It suits some of our carers a lot better. I think so. Some of our carers who are busy, who work full-time jobs, they do tend to prefer meeting online. It's quicker. I suppose it cuts down travel time for us as well, so it gives us a bit more time to catch up on the never-ending paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So it works for some of our carers. However, for some of our other carers who prefer the in-person meeting and greeting, it's different. Mm-hmm. So I suppose pros and cons.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than getting to sit down and have a coffee with somebody and things through, but it's definitely helpful to be able to be flexible, to meet out of hours,
That's right.
to meet online over the weekends as well for training, things like that. Any agency that you do choose to inquire through, will run things slightly differently, but but all the agencies will endeavour to try to make that as flexible as possible to fit around your different lifestyles. So as Chrysanne has said, you can work full-time and be a foster carer. You can fit this around other commitments that you might have. It's just those regular meetings that Dale mentioned, things like a care team meeting or meeting with your case manager, that do need to be regular, but agencies will try to make that as flexible as possible for you. And of course, the benefit of Zoom is, you can sort of dial in from anywhere. So that's great as well. I do have a couple of extra questions. So I might start, I might jump back to you, Chrysanne. It looks like we have lost Michaela and Tracy, unfortunately.
Yes.
When people call up to inquire with your agency about becoming a foster carer, what are some of the things that they might, that they often get wrong, or that they might misunderstand before they start this process?
I think one of the things I've noticed is, if carers working full time, they think that might stop them from becoming foster carers, which is not the case. Like you were saying before, we try our best to be as flexible as we can in providing options for our carers. And because the need is so big, because there's so many children out there that require homes, we'll do whatever we need to do to make it happen. And there are so many different types of foster care. There's long-term, short-term, there's respite, there's emergency, all equally as important as each other. So I think that's one of the big ones. Like if I'm working full-time, can I do it? If I'm single, can I do it? If I've got children of my own, what's the right age, I suppose, of having children to foster? And that's something that we work through. It depends on your parenting style. It depends on, what your work commitments are and what you do as a family. So that's why that initial phone call when you call to inquire is so important. And that's when we work through some of these issues.
Absolutely. I think similar for me on our statewide recruitment line, I often hear people saying, I'm not quite sure if I can do it. That's what our job is to help you understand where those eligibility criteria will start and stop, and also to make sure that you understand that your personal circumstances will be different to all of our foster carers. They will change over time as well, whether you're single or partnered, and if that changes in the time that you're registered as a foster carer, if you're renting or you own your house and that also changes, all of those things might impact on the types of placements that you have, whether it is, as Chrysanne said, short-term, long-term, respite or emergency care. But the agency will keep checking in with you and making sure that that the type of care that you're providing will change with your lifestyle. They'll also look at things like the ages of children. So if you've got children of your own living in your household, they'll help you decide what age range is going to work best for your family dynamics. You do not have to put your hand up to say, I'll care for babies to 18-year-olds and it's a lucky dip. It's not like that at all. You'll have a say in that process to make sure that it's going to be the best fit for you and for the young person. So Dale, you mentioned at the top of this live stream that you've done different types of care. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's like when you get that phone call about a new placement and you're working out if it's going to be the right fit for you?
Yeah, when that first call actually comes through, it can be quite overwhelming again and quite daunting and quite scary too. When we got our first placement, we were a little bit concerned ourselves because all of a sudden the car turned up and these two young siblings got out and off goes the car and here you are with them. So it can be quite overwhelming because you don't know how you're going to handle the situation. But the more you go on, the more time that you do spend with the kids and the more placements that you do have, whether it is through respite or short term or long term, you start to get that experience behind you and just realize that it's actually not that hard, that you are capable of doing it. And the actual agencies do help you to understand that as well with their support as well. So it's not just us understanding that, it's that happening as well. So each placement that does come, it's just a new experience that you get. We've had a lot of kids where we've had respite care come and we already have kids in our care. So a lot of those kids do understand them as well. So they've been sitting at the door waiting for them to come as well. So they make it quite exciting as well. And it just makes it easier for you when a lot of these kids can get along together as well. So it is a great experience to see that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dale. And Dale, I know, as you mentioned, you've got some young people, they are now, in long-term care. And so if the agency, if we do need some respite care or emergency care, they might still call you up if they know that you've got a spare room, and they'll talk to you about how it might work with the children you've already got in your care, the time frame that you're looking at. Sometimes it will just be a short-term arrangement while other parts of the moving machine are looking for family members or a foster family that might be a little bit more suitable and a better match. So they'll always talk to you about that and take into consideration the other children and young people in your home, to make sure that it is going to be the right fit, because we don't want to make it a negative experience, as much as we can control that, for any children and young people that are already in care with you. Chrysanne, could you tell us about some of the qualities that you think make amazing foster carers or ideal candidates for foster care?
Yes, I think for our foster carers, it's important to understand that children are coming from a vulnerable background, and they're coming from an experience of trauma, and that really significantly impacts every part of who they are. So understanding that is really important, because once you understand that, your responses to their behaviors will be different. So being really open to, I suppose, changing how you perceive behavior, changing how you understand behavior is important. So I think parenting a child who's come from a trauma background is completely different to parenting your own children that don't necessarily experience that background. So maybe having a really open mind and open heart to understanding that, which we will teach you, we will coach you through that, through the training. So I think that's really important. And probably one of the other things is to be really open and communicate well with the agency. The more we know about you and your circumstances, your struggles, your vulnerabilities, the more we can help. So being really reflective about your parenting and about what's happening in your home, and talking to us about it, I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely, Chrysanne. And I think that's a really important point for people who might be considering fostering as a single person or as somebody who hasn't had children of their own. You do not need to have parenting experience to be a foster carer. And the biggest reason for that is the way that we need to respond to children in foster care who are not living with their families and who have experienced trauma does mean that that there are different techniques and strategies that you'll use in that parenting sort of process or caring process. So it is okay if you don't have experience in caring for your own children, or if you are doing this as a single person, because you will have lots of professionals around you who do understand what it's like to care for traumatized children and can help you with those strategies as well. Michaela, welcome back. We're just talking about some of the attributes, I guess, or qualities that make ideal foster carers. Could you tell me a little bit about what you think some of those are?
Definitely having an open mind, non-judgmental, and a willingness to learn. Because as you're saying about children going through trauma, it is very different to children that aren't in out-of-home care. And a way that we kind of help and support with that as well is we do offer obviously support, ongoing support, consistent communication, but also we do have little helpful sheets on behavioural things, some things that might pop up with a child that has experienced trauma, and how to kind of manage those situations and just make things a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michaela. Dale, I know that you have children and young people in care, and also you have, your partner also has children of her own. What are some of the differences that you've noticed in how you would care differently for children in home-based care?
You've just got to be flexible with a lot of kids and take each one as an individual case too, because there is a big difference between having your own biological kids and those in care, and the main difference is the traumas that have been experienced. So generally what works for one child might not necessarily work for another, and that's the biggest challenge is trying to sort of figure out what's trauma and what's not. It's try to understand the differences between each child in an individual case, and that's really what we've got to try to do is put our minds into those of the young ones as well, just to understand what they're going through. Because once we start looking outside of that, it can start becoming personal to us. And we just need to take each child as it comes in each case, and just be flexible ourselves. Don't think that we know everything, because that's one of the biggest mistakes we can make, is when we do think we know everything. And that's where we can reach out for help too, because once you get a few of the professionals involved with the agency, generally you find that a lot of the traumas can be dealt with. So it's really, really one of those things that we've got to keep close in mind with our case managers. The agencies do support in that way, and it supports all the children more on an individual basis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dale. For anybody who's listening and hearing words like trauma or parenting differently, and feeling like that might be a little bit overwhelming, I guess that's the point of what our wonderful agencies are here for, is to support you through that. You do not have to figure it all out by yourself, and it is not something that you'll be expected to understand completely from day one and to respond amazingly from day one. One of the most important things, I think, in foster care is the ability to repair any mistakes that you might make. So you don't have to be perfect all of the time, and you don't have to know what you're doing 100% of the time. It's about that relationship that you're able to build with the child that's going to have the most impact on their outcomes in life, which is the goal that we're all working towards. So one of the things I often hear on the inquiry line is from people who say things like, I'd love to be a foster carer, but I'm not sure how I would say goodbye at the end of a placement, or I might get too attached to them. Michaela, what would you say to somebody who was wondering about that and not sure how they would cope with it?
That's definitely something that we cover extensively during our training, because being in ACO, obviously our number one goal for Aboriginal children in foster care is to go home or to go with community. So it's always going to be, from the outset, we're saying this, probably is not going, do not go into it with this long-term view. And just it's a privilege to look after an Aboriginal child, and just think of how amazing the experience is that you got to be a part of their life, and turn it around to like a strengths-based kind of approach. You've been a part of this young person's life. You've made a massive impact. You've given them a caring, wonderful home for them, and that's going to sit with them for years to come. And try to think about that instead of saying goodbye. Think of it as, no, you had this wonderful time with them.
Thank you, Michaela. Chrysanne, would you add anything to that from the agency point of view?
No, I think Michaela's summed it up really well. I know, yeah, it's really challenging to say goodbye, but thinking about what an amazing job you've given them. We like to use the term, a different lens of the world. So you've given them something else to look forward to. You've shown them a different side of the world, a different side of people, and they will hold on to that.
Thanks, Chrysanne. Dale, I know you've got your long-term placements, but you have said goodbye to different children and young people over time. What advice would you give to somebody who wasn't sure about how they would cope with that letting go?
Yeah, I like to think of it as you do look at these young ones as being like a niece and a nephew to yourself. So when they do come to you to live with them, you know that the long-term goal is that they are going to be reunited with their families, and that's what we all want to support, or in another placement. So when you do have them, you love them, you cherish them like they are your niece and your nephew. But you do have that long-term goal to go back as well. So it's exactly like Michaela and Chrysanne were saying there as well. So once we've got that mindset right, it is very different to what you think, because that there is probably the most common question I do get asked as well, is how that people find it very hard to give up a child. But certainly when you have that outlook that they are like a niece and a nephew, it does help you to get through that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dale. I absolutely agree with the idea of, being an auntie or an uncle, sort of another supporting adult in these children and young people's lives. It's not about replacing parents or families. It's about helping these children while they are able to be reunified with parents, if that's the safest outcome for them. Chrysanne, what are some of the other common questions that you hear from people when they call up to inquire about fostering?
whether what things might look like if they've got people coming to stay in their home. I suppose if they've got someone visiting from overseas, or if they've got someone moving in as a roommate, and what that looks like. So the process is different for different circumstances, I guess. If someone's coming to live in your home, it's a different process. But if someone's visiting for a short period of time, that again is different. We just generally speaking, we do have to do police checks and and working with children checks for people that are going to be caring for the child, for anything longer than a couple of hours usually. So that's one of the questions we do get. The other question, I suppose, is, does a child have to have their own room? Like, do we have enough space in the house? So yes, our foster children do have to have their own space, their own room. So that's a need for the placement to happen, I suppose. I think that's kind of like the common ones that come to mind.
That's fantastic, thank you. And really good point about, there are differences depending on how much somebody is going to spend time in your home. And again, that's the role of the agency. So you'll give your caseworker a call and you'll say, this is the circumstance that might be changing for our family, and they will help guide you through that process. So again, you don't need to be the one that holds all of that information and remembers every single rule for fostering. That's what the agency is there to support you with, and everybody's lifestyle and circumstances are going to be different. Michaela, what are some of the common questions that you might hear on when people are calling up to become a foster carer with your agency? Oh, you're muted again.
Sorry, I keep doing that. I think a common one is, do they themselves have to be Aboriginal to care for an Aboriginal child? And the answer is no, you don't. But you do need a willingness to learn about this child's culture so that the placement is culturally safe. And it's a great opportunity to be welcomed into the community as well and be a part of that. So that's probably the most common question we have. And no, you don't.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you.
So I think that is pretty much all we've got time for today. So unless there's any questions coming through on the Facebook chat, we might wrap things up, which it doesn't look like there are. So I would like to extend a huge thank you to our panelists who've joined us today. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Dale, it's been wonderful to have you here as our wonderful volunteer foster carer. And Chrysanne and Michaela, it's been great to have you as well. And Tracy, who has unfortunately had some tech issues. I'd also like to extend a really massive thank you to all of our foster carers across Victoria who are making a huge difference in the lives of children and young people in care. If you're interested in learning more about becoming a foster carer, please don't hesitate to give us a call on the number behind me. It's 1800 013 088, or you can visit our website fosteringconnections.com.au. So if you give us a call on that number, you'll speak to me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have to help you understand that assessment process and to put you in touch with an agency that's in the region that you live in, whether that's one of the agencies that's joined us today or a different one. I can help you to go through that process as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks again to our panelists. And that might be all we've got time for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye everyone.